you everything you need to fight the Trump administration. This is The Bill Press Show, live at youtube.com/The Bill Press Show.
The blue wave, it turns out it was even bigger than we thought. And it all adds up to a total repudiation of the politics and the policies and the person of Donald Trump. What do you say? Hello, everybody. On November 9, on a Thursday, it is the Bill Press Show. Here we are, and here you are. Oh, great to be back together again with lots and lots to talk about. Yes, indeed, the aftermath of the results of November 7 coming into clearer perspective, and everybody just stunned by the sweep of the progressive Democratic victories nationwide on Tuesday at every level: city council, mayors, state legislature, and governorships, of course, sending the Republicans reeling and wondering, what the hell do we do about Donald Trump in 2018? Meanwhile, lots of other news, of course, on the sexual harassment front, sexual assault front. Kevin Spacey, yet another accuser, comes forward yesterday, and Hollywood has ripped Kevin Spacey right out of a movie set to be released on December 22nd this year. And Donald Trump in China praising the Chinese for screwing the United States on his various tax deals, those same tax deals that Donald Trump campaigned against and promised to retaliate against as candidate. He has certainly changed his tune as president. Man, that's just the beginning of where we're going to start today. So much to talk about. So you stay, good to have you with us. Stay involved and send us your comments on Twitter at BP Show. We'll jump right into it. But first,
this is the Full Court Press.
Just a couple of other stories making news. Yesterday at Cook County Courthouse, there was a jury selection.
How about it? Yeah.
Including former President Barack Obama. He was there. He doesn't have a job anymore in the White House. Now, Barack Obama was also summoned for jury duty in 2010 when he was a little busier than he is now. Barack Obama showed up at the courthouse, went through the process of sitting through the informative session on if you are picked as a juror, which they point out in this AP story is a 20-minute video anchored by Lester Holt from back when he was a local guy in Chicago, apparently. But he was not picked. Barack Obama was not picked. He was dismissed, and he was given a check for $17.20 for performing his civic duty. He said that he would donate that money to Cook County.
Well, what's the big deal? I mean, I get called. I go down to the courthouse, right? So why shouldn't he? No,
yeah.
It was really good of him to show up.
Exactly.
He could have begged off, but I think it was...
He sure could have.
That was an important message to send. Good for him. Yeah.
Earlier,
and he looked like he had a good time while he was there.
Sure, yeah. I mean, what else does he have to do? You know? Earlier this year, we said farewell to Sebastian Gorka from the Trump administration. He was the Trump
Gee, I wonder where he might end up.
Where did he end up? Well, yesterday, Fox News made it official. He has been hired to work there at Fox News. It was announced by Sean.
It is Dr. Gorka to you.
Dr. Gorka.
But
it was announced on Sean Hannity's radio show first.
Yeah, but come on. He was working for Fox all along.
Of course he was.
Yeah, just like Hope Hicks is and Kellyanne Conway is, and all of them are.
By the way, I love that there's a Politico piece the other day about what all of these former Trump administration people are doing, and Reince Priebus apparently is just playing golf every day and drinking Heinekens.
By the way,
with Sean Spicer.
That sounds pretty damn good. Right?
Yeah.
Like, if I've worked for Donald Trump, my out plan is going to be play golf all day and drink Heinekens. That's really all I want to do. By the way, one other quick story. Last night was the Country Music Association Awards, the CMA Awards. Not really going to go through who won anything, but it was telling because they started off the show with a parody song about how bad Donald Trump is and started talking about how he needs to stop tweeting so much.
Whoa.
That's the Trump base, man.
Stay in China.
Yeah,
where
right.
It's illegal to tweet.
On your radio, on TV,
and online. This is the Bill Press Show.
Yep, they can't even shut him up, not even in China, where tweets are forbidden, except for the President of the United States. He's got a cell phone, and he hasn't stopped. I woke up to another Donald Trump tweet this morning. What do you say? Hello, everybody.
China.
On a Thursday, November 9, it's kind of good to have the president out of town. You know what I mean? It seems seems a little more normal.
It's not bad.
Not as much craziness going on. It's the Bill Press Show. Welcome. Great to see you today. Thanks so much for being with us for the next 2 hours as we romp through the headlines of the day and give you a chance to comment on them. Of course, we're with you, God, just about everywhere, every way we can be, online on YouTube, youtube.com/The Bill Press Show. Of course, looking at you on Free Speech TV nationwide and out in the greater Chicago area, WCPT, and in Indiana Talks. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And remember, it's a two-way street. We want to hear from you. Your comments on the news of the day. Send us your comments on Twitter at BP Show, or you can just go in the chat room, Jamie, at thebillpressshow.com, right?
YouTube.com / The Bill Press Show. But yeah, the YouTube player right there is on our website as well. BillPressShow.com.
You got it. Lots and lots going on. By the way, it was yesterday. I don't know whether you had a chance to see. Yesterday was the first anniversary of the disaster that struck this nation exactly 1 year ago with the electoral college election only of Donald Trump. And of course, he wasn't going to brag about it yesterday, no, because he doesn't do that. I mean, he's not still talking about how many electoral college votes he won. No, he wouldn't do that. Not Donald Trump, no. He wouldn't send out a photo from Air Force One giving the thumbs up, which had been planned ahead of time, by the way, because it went off at the tweet went out at 2:30 in the morning, Beijing time. So clearly that was not when this photograph was taken. I
don't know. I mean, considering his weird sleep schedule, who knows with that guy?
And certainly Donald Trump would not have decided, okay, I'm going to celebrate my first year in office by standing here with 4 other white guys and 1 white woman. That was this is the Trump administration, and it was Jared Kushner and Steve Miller and Hope Hicks and the guy who does his social media.
Dan Scavino. Stephen Miller was in the picture.
I mentioned him.
It's great. It's
one
great.
Other guy, but it was just 5 white guys and a white woman.
Keep that picture.
Yeah.
Keep that picture. And in a year.
All thumbs up.
And in a year, let's see how many of those people have gone to jail or been indicted on something.
It is 1 year as of tomorrow that we had our election victory, and it was a great victory and a victory that made a lot of people very happy.
Yeah, it made a lot.
That was in South Korea because it's perfect time to bring that up.
Yeah. Made more people unhappy, and of course yesterday he congratulated the deplorables, all caps.
Yeah.
Who voted for him. And it is strange that he's in China celebrating the Chinese and congratulating the Chinese on their trade deals, which have left a huge trade imbalance, trade debt with the United States. If you remember, I clearly do, this is something that, well, first of all, Donald Trump's been complaining about long before he became a candidate for president. And building the wall was one of the 2, and locking Hillary up, I guess. They were the 3 centerpieces of his campaign for president. Remember, he was going to retaliate against China. He was going to go to China and give them hell. He used stronger words than that, and particularly because they were manipulating our currency. Yesterday, that's not the Donald Trump that we saw in China. Yesterday, it was Pussycat Donald Trump.
I have great respect for you for that, because you're representing China. But it's too bad that past administrations allowed it to get so far out of kilter.
So, no. All those bad trade deals, all that manipulation of currency, it wasn't China's fault. No, it was the fault of past administrations. The last thing I'm going to do is blame China.
Both the United States and China will have a more prosperous future if we can achieve a level economic playing field. Right now, unfortunately, it is a very one-sided and unfair one. But But I don't blame China.
No, don't blame China. All right, blames the United States. You know, I thought it used to be something where whenever a Democratic president traveled abroad, that if he said anything critical of the United States, Republicans would say, no, politics stops at the water's edge.
That's
you
right.
don't go to another country and criticize the United States.
That's right.
Remember?
Yeah, I do remember. Yeah.
I remember particularly when Barack Obama said that the United States, in terms of nuclear, we wanted a nuclear-free world, and the United States was one of those nations that had pursued nuclear weapons and, in fact, used one. I mean, Republicans just went ballistic. Right?
The apology
Bonkers.
tour.
The apology tour.
Remember that?
Yeah. When he said and admitted that even in the area of human rights, that we've got some lessons to learn and some progress to make in the United States. God knows, right? But yeah, the apology tour. Now, you hear that apologetic tone of Donald Trump in China? Oh, my. Well, of course, Donald Trump would rather talk about anything other than what happened here on November 7th. Of course, we talked about it yesterday, but, you know, I have to tell you, I spent a lot of time yesterday just going through the results of November 7th, not just in the big states, in the big hallmark elections in Virginia and New Jersey, but across the board. It is stunning, the breadth and the depth of the progressive victories, Democratic victories on November 7th at the city council level, at the mayor's level, state legislative races, and of course, to two big governorships. And one thing I found that is so fascinating is so much of this is a result of this new grassroots energy that began the day after Donald Trump was sworn into office with the Women's March in Washington. And we've talked about this so much, and we've had these groups in here. But no, I'm not taking anything away from the DNC because I think Tom Perez, particularly in Virginia, did a good job, and the DNC was involved in many of these races around the country. But where the candidates came from and the energy came from, they came from these grassroots organizations like Our Revolution, Bernie Sanders Group, like MoveOn.org, like Emily's List, like Run for Something, and Indivisible, and all these organizations who went out and recruited candidates and then fought like hell for these candidates. And the results are really, really stunning. I mean, let's start with about Virginia. In Virginia, yeah. Okay, it was a squeaker. It was seen to be a squeaker all the way through. Everybody said it's going to be really close, maybe 2 points, right? Hillary Clinton won Virginia by 5 points last year. Ralph Northam beat Ed Gillespie by 9 points. And again, the energy, turnout in Virginia was up 16% over 2013, the last time they elected a governor, when Terry McAuliffe was elected, up 16%. In Charlottesville, University of Virginia, young people particularly coming out to vote, turnout was up 31%. Oh, I mean, that's phenomenal over 2013. And why did people come out to vote? Over 1/3 of the people in Virginia told the people, the poll watchers or whatever, that from the networks, that they came out to vote. Get this, over 1/3 came out to vote not for Ralph Northam, not against Ed Gillespie. They came out to vote against Donald Trump. 17% said they came out to vote for Donald Trump. So twice as many came out to say that was their motivation for voting in a governor's race where Donald Trump wasn't on the ballot. Donald Trump didn't even campaign in the state. But, of course, what happened was that Ed Gillespie tried to mimic Donald Trump with his policies and his focus on immigration and painting all immigrants as gang members and standing up for the Confederate statues and being Trumpism, as we called it. Somebody called it Trumpism without Trump. And that failed miserably, blew up in his face. And we saw that in Virginia. And what was reflected in Virginia, so you got Ralph Northam as elected, the African-American first one elected statewide in Virginia, since Douglas Wilder was governor. Democrat Mark Herring elected as Attorney General. And then in the House of Delegates, where you really saw the sweep, 66, it used to be, before yesterday, Tuesday, it was 66-34. Democrats picked up 15 seats in the House of Delegates. It stands today at 49-48, with 4 seats still undecided.
Man, that's close.
So it could end up being, 49-47, I think it is, right. It could be 50-50.
Yeah.
Or it could be 51-50. Yeah, it could.
That is.
But
just
going
tight,
from
man.
66-34, and then the kind of people who want to get into that later too. But just a total shift. And on top of that, you've got huge victory, of course, even a bigger margin in New Jersey, not unexpected, and Bill de Blasio coasting to a second term as the outright progressive mayor of New York City. Remember, supported Bernie Sanders. He's a Bernie bro, ran as a progressive, and is governed as a progressive. So huge victory there as well. Of course, some Republicans are trying to poo-poo it. The seldom heard of chair of the DNC, Rona Romney.
The RNC.
The RNC, I'm sorry, RNC, thank you. Rona Romney, what's her last name? McDaniel, right. Saying, oh, come on, this is no big deal.
We're back to status quo. Republicans won 5 special elections, including Utah last night, that they should have won, and Democrats won 2 goverships that they should have won. So nothing really changed. They're going to try and create this big narrative. They should have won Virginia. They should have won New Jersey.
Yeah, right. Yeah, come on. By the way, a Republican won in Utah? Shocking.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, Donald Trump endorsed Ed Gillespie. He didn't campaign for him. He endorsed him. He tweeted for him, and he did robocalls for him. Yeah, they were trying to win. But believe me, they wanted Virginia, and they thought they were going to win it.
You know, the thing that really struck out to me yesterday as I was reading more and more about the election is not just how big the blue wave was, but how many people won who have been, not necessarily personally, but their identities have been attacked by Donald Trump as president. Donald Trump has come out. He has said he's going to kick transgender members of the military out of the military. He's talked about African Americans and the white supremacists who have opposed them, saying there are good people on both sides. He's talked about LGBT rights. He's talked about people of color. He's talked
women.
About
he doesn't concede
women in general.
Second-class
He's talked
citizens.
about people from the Middle East, of Middle East descent. But if you just look at how voters responded to that, Virginia elected its first openly transgender state lawmaker in Danica Rome. In Minneapolis, a transgender activist, Andrea Jenkins, was elected to the city council. Justin Fairfax, the next lieutenant governor of Virginia, he's the second African-American to win statewide in Virginia. In New Jersey, Sheila Oliver was elected as the first female African-American lieutenant governor. In Charlotte, North Carolina, their first African-American female mayor, Vi Lyles. I mean, you could go on and on down the list. Manchester, New Hampshire elected their first female mayor, their first ever female mayor.
Right. The people that really shown on Tuesday, if you will, are the people Peter's talking about there. Women, people of color. Again, in Virginia, among women, the first 2 Latinas elected ever to the House of Delegates in Virginia. The first Asian American woman ever elected to the House of Delegates.
The new mayor of Hoboken is a Sikh.
Yeah, I was getting there.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. But
if you look at, as Peter mentioned, at people of color, first African American mayor of Charlotte, Vi Lyles, right? You mentioned her. The first African American mayor of St. Paul, Minnesota. I love this, in Helena, Montana. The first African-American mayor who happens to be a refugee from Liberia. Again, just anti-Trump, right? He dumps on refugees. He dumps on immigrants. Helena, Montana, of all places, elects this Liberian refugee as its mayor. The LGBT community, a big night. Peter, you mentioned Danica Rome, first transgender member of the House of Delegates in Minneapolis. 2 transgender people elected to the Minneapolis City Council. Seattle, the first lesbian mayor of the city of Seattle. And in Palm Springs, California, the entire city council now in Palm Springs, California, is LGBTQ. Yeah. Right. As the headline last night, the entire council's queer, which some people now don't use as a pejorative term, at any rate. And I certainly wasn't in that sense. But the amazing strides across the board, and I know I'm forgetting a few. The progressive community, again, I mentioned Our Revolution and other organizations. I talked to our friend Larry Cohen from Our Revolution, who's chair of the board yesterday. He was really, he's over the moon, but he mentioned particularly Somerville, Massachusetts. So the Our Revolution people up in Massachusetts, they focused on Somerville. 7 members of Our Revolution stepped forward as candidates for the city council in Somerville. They decided they were going to take over the city council in Somerville. They challenged every one of the 7 incumbents in Somerville, Massachusetts. Guess what? They won every single one of them.
That's huge, man.
Isn't that amazing?
That's enormous.
So it just goes on and on. Again, the breadth and the depth of the win is striking. And it all adds up to a total repudiation of the politics, the policies, and the person of Donald Trump. I have to say that one of my favorite stories of the day was, I don't even know whether he's a Democrat or Republican, to tell the truth. We should check it out. A guy up in Tinton Falls, New Jersey, Vito Perillo, is 93 years old.
What?
Yeah, 93. He said he wore out 2 pair of shoes walking door to door, running for mayor, and he won.
Oh, my God.
And he says he can't wait to get to work for the people of Tinton Falls, New Jersey.
93 years old.
93 years old. So, man. So it was a big night, and at least one Republican from Virginia had to admit that all this Republican attempt, and remember Donald Trump right away throwing Ed Gillespie under the bus by saying, well, Gillespie didn't embrace me and he didn't support my policies. That's why he lost. No, he did support his policies. He 100% Ed Gillespie tried to be the Donald Trump without Donald Trump standing alongside of him. But Congressman Scott Taylor from Virginia said, come on, let's be honest. We got our clock cleaned.
Logically, and if we want to be intellectually consistent, in 2009 when Governor Bob McDonnell won Virginia resoundingly, it was a referendum on President Obama, and if the results last night were the opposite, we would have said that as well. So I think that you have to attribute some of these things, given the exit polls, given the Democrat turnout.
Yeah,
Duh.
It was. Right.
Duh.
Yeah, it was a referendum on Donald Trump, and the referendum Donald Trump got crushed. Scott Taylor going on to say, just identifying Donald Trump's rhetoric as one of the chief problems.
You can certainly attribute some things to perhaps the candidate and Gillespie as well, too, but there was an overwhelming thing that was looming large, and that was, I think it was the divisive rhetoric. Divisive rhetoric
of Donald Trump. And so, by the way, one other big victory for on Tuesday was Obamacare. Despite Donald Trump's, all of his efforts, for the last year, and the Republicans in Congress, to badmouth Obamacare, do anything they could to either repeal it or just to weaken it by executive action. The voters yesterday, 4 out of 10 voters in Virginia said their number one issue, number one thing they care about was health care. And that's why they came out to vote. So Obamacare remains popular, particularly, I guess, if you call it the Affordable Care Act and not Obamacare. And, of course, as we mentioned, up in the state of Maine, voters overwhelmingly said, yes, we do want to expand Medicare, Paul LePage, and we're going to do it. Now Paul LePage is saying, I'll only do it if the legislature pays. Maybe he doesn't know. For the first few years, the federal government pays all the price, the cost of expanding Medicare. I don't think he
understands how this works.
I don't think Paul LePage understands.
59% of Mainers voted on expansion of Medicaid.
Big win.
Yeah.
Question 2. Yes, 59% of Mainers. Not to mention that Mainers also voted yes on recreational marijuana. But Paul LePage vetoed that, and the Maine House narrowly upheld his veto. So no recreational marijuana in Maine. Great.
Right. It certainly does raise the question. We'll talk more about this with two of our guests today. Congressman Peter Welch from Vermont joining us next, actually. First half hour with a guest, and then Congressman John Yarmuth from Kentucky coming along a little bit later. Alex Seitz-Wald from MSNBC will be here for our second hour as a friend of Bill. But the question facing all these Republicans now, given the repudiation of Donald Trump across the board on Tuesday, is what do they do in 2018? Do they run with him or do they run without him? Chuck Schumer had a little warning yesterday for his friends on the other side of the aisle.
In 2005, I was head of the DSCC, and you could smell a wave coming. The results last night smell exactly the same way. Our Republican friends better look out.
Our Republican friends better look out indeed.
You know, one thing that I thought was really interesting, we've talked a lot about all the great news out of the election, but I saw so many people holding up signs as they were voting or tagging their social media posts by saying, this is important that we're voting locally. There was no national ballot.
Yeah.
There were a couple of statewide races, but a lot of these were made up of local, in your community elections, which frankly, a lot of people, a lot of Democrats for so long had forgotten about. And I know we've got a long ways to go. This is a pretty good first sign.
No, and again, it was coming from the grassroots up. I mean, there was no overwhelming Democratic leadership that said, okay, here's our plan, here's what we're going to do, and here are all these people are going to run. This sprang up from these grassroots, the new, particularly some of them new, some not, but re-energized progressive grassroots organizations across the country. And we just gave you the tip of the iceberg. Didn't even mention, for example, down in Georgia, in the red state of Georgia.
Yeah.
There were 2 House seats.
Yeah.
State House seats that were flipped. We've seen in Oklahoma this year, not this Tuesday, but this year, there have been 3 House seats flipped in Oklahoma from Republican to Democrat. So even in the red states, these local chapters of these grassroots organizations, progressive organizations, are making a huge, huge difference. A couple of little quick stories I mentioned here before we break at the half. Senator Rand Paul gave a little report yesterday on his status. He tweeted out he is doing well, but the count now is 6 broken ribs.
Damn, dude.
From that altercation with his neighbor, allegedly over lawn clippings and
gotta take care of that stuff.
Yeah, and leaves blowing from one lawn to the other. Apparently, a feud that's been going on with his neighbor for a long time. And actor Kevin Spacey, who has already just about ruined his career, has already just been about ruined from the first report of sexual assault from a young actor. Now a woman yesterday came out and told the story of how Kevin Spacey up in Nantucket had assaulted her 18-year-old son. What's the movie, Peter, that was announced yesterday? Kevin Spacey's been ripped out. There's a movie that was completed with him. He has a starring role in it, right?
Yeah.
And they've reshot the movie, replaced him with somebody else.
Yeah, I forgot the name of the movie.
Took him out of the movie entirely.
All the money in the world.
All the money in the world.
About J. Paul Getty.
Yeah.
And he plays J. Paul Getty.
No.
But it's a minor role. It focuses on, I think he's kidnapped or something. I forget what the actual story is. But he spent about 8 to 12 days filming. But he's still in the movie. They've now hired a new actor. and they're going to reshoot all of the scenes in which Kevin Spacey's character appears.
Look, there is a very important lesson in all of this.
Yeah.
Which, like, look, the whole idea of sexual harassment and sexual assault is really coming to light now, and I think that so much of it has been covered up and excused and accepted for so long. But
no longer.
If you can't accept any of the reasons that, like, it's spelled out for you why it's wrong, just understand this. Kevin Spacey is poison now, and Kevin Spacey is one of the most talented and like well-received actors of our generation.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
now he can't even. I mean, they're canceling House of Cards. They're taking him out of movies. This is what happens when you act like this.
And at first, when the first thing came out, we thought this was one isolated incident years and years ago, and now it turns out it was, like Harvey Weinstein, a pattern. I'll take a quick break and come back with our good friend from the state of Vermont, Congressman Peter Welch, joining us. And today is the day that the House Ways and Means Committee is expected to vote on its tax plan. What's in it for middle-class Americans? We'll find out from Congressman Peter Welch, if anything.
China.
Download our podcast, search for The Bill Press Show on iTunes, and remember to rate, review, and subscribe. This is The Bill Press Show.
Hamilton was adopted from a rescue in 2008. He really likes to be around people. And as soon as I start to make my breakfast, Hamilton is right there. I get out my mat and I'm doing a downward dog and he's underneath. He's quite the pug about town. He gets invited to a lot of parties. He knows he's a pretty big deal. I mean, look at this little face. How could you not love him?
Adventure can be found anywhere, but the best place to start is in the forest.
I spy something beginning with S.
Snow?
No.
Snow-covered trees?
Nothing to do with snow.
Head outside to discover incredible animals and beautiful plants that come together to create an unforgettable adventure.
Wow.
So grab your loved ones.
Don't even.
And explore a world of possibilities.
Come on, this way.
Visit discovertheforest.org to find the closest forest or park to you.
Hey, Hard, what's this?
That's my resignation letter.
You're resigning?
Why? Because you're constantly ignoring me. You're half as active as you used to be, and you get stuff like this. You've been putting me under a lot of pressure lately. That's why I'm ready to quit.
I forgot. I'll do better. Please, don't quit on me.
Okay, but remember, it's not what you say. It's what you do.
Listen to your heart. Don't let it quit on you.
Let's go for a walk.
Uncontrolled high blood pressure could lead to a stroke, heart attack, or death. Get yours to a healthy range before it's too late.
Being prepared is a part of who you are. But it's especially important in the case of a disaster. Be informed about possible emergencies in your area. Make a plan that covers where you'll go in an emergency. Build a kit with the things you need to survive. There's no one more capable of planning for your situation than you. Start your plan today. Go to ready.gov/myplan.
Fancy pants peanut butter? A big screen television? You haven't even bought a sofa yet. A motorcycle? When your father finds out, he's gonna flip his shoes with 2 buckles? What do you even need 2 buckles for? Mr. Big Shot, buying whiskey shots for everybody in the bar. From the looks of it, I'd say nobody even remembers. Feed the pig.
Great show. New great channel. Stream live video at youtube.com/The Bill Press Show.
On a Thursday, November 9, yes, here we are, The Bill Press Show. Good to be with you. Thanks so much for joining us as we boom out to you coast to coast from our studio on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., with all the news of the day, brought to you today by the Laborers International Union of North America. Yes, the great members of the Laborers Union under President Terry O'Sullivan. So passed their building just yesterday. They have a brand new addition to the Laborers headquarters down at 16th and I here in Washington, D.C., with a new restaurant in it. Can't wait to try out all the work of President Terry O'Sullivan, and find out more information from their website, Liuna, L-I-U-N-A, buildsamerica.org. We had to expand our studio this morning, make a little room and extra room, and add some extra chairs to welcome the entire congressional delegation from the state of Vermont to our studio. And,
sitting in one pretty nice chair,
and
I'll say.
Here he is, right across from us, Congressman Peter Welch. Hey, Congressman, great.
I'm all here.
Great to see you.
I had a hard time getting all of us together.
All of us together.
Getting up here early, yeah. But it's good to be back, Bill. It's been a while.
It has been a while, too long. So it's good to see you back. I want to ask first, do you have any news from your colleague and our good friend Mark Pocan? We heard yesterday that Congressman Mark Pocan, the co-chair of the Progressive Caucus, having triple bypass surgery.
Yeah, no, I don't have the latest news, but we're rooting for him. He's a fantastic member.
Isn't he,
I know
right.
He is. He's got he's got that quality in a politician or a person actually alike. He's all in. He fights hard. But he's really gracious and really respectful of everyone. He's just hard not to like.
It's been fun to watch him as a relatively new member, grow in stature.
He's all in. He plunges ahead, and he's got such a good disposition that even people disagree with him always want to listen to him and find some way to say yes. He's great.
That's good. So we wish him well, and we're going to send Peter out to Madison, Wisconsin, to give the good congressman some tips on how to recover from open heart surgery.
Recovering from open heart surgery, not fun, but it's not as bad. You can make it happen.
Look at
you can. Yeah. My brother who's with me had surgery 20 years ago,
and Peter did.
I just did 2 months ago. Yeah.
Well, you look awake. And pretty good.
I'm playing it off pretty well.
Yeah.
So, Congressman, the Ways and Means Committee is supposed to pass the House version of the tax cut bill today, and the Senate to release their version of it. What's in it for middle-class Americans?
Pretty much nothing. I mean, it's really pretty bad. There's two things I want to talk about. One is process, and a lot of times that bores people, but it tells you how bad this is. This bill was written in secret, just like the health care bill. There were no hearings whatsoever, and you contrast that with the 86 tax change, with President Reagan and Bill Bradley and Gephardt and bipartisan participation. They had months of hearings. They had over 430 witnesses. In the case of this tax bill, no one saw it until the first version was rolled out. It was written essentially in the Speaker's office.
Rolled out like just last week.
That's right. Yeah. So it's not an on-the-level process. And what that means is that some of the very difficult challenges that anyone would ever face when you're writing a tax bill, there's no discussion of it that allows for people to come to some consensus and try actually to achieve that goal that was stated as a goal, and that's to help the middle class. Because that bill, when it first came out, 80% of the benefit went to the top 1% of taxpayers. So we're borrowing $1.5 trillion that they admit to. It's probably much closer to $2.5 trillion. We're going to add that to the debt. And then 80% of that money goes to the top 1%. So you then have 20% of Americans fighting over, or 99% of Americans fighting over 20%. So it's just not possible that the middle class gets a big boost. When you get granular, there's some middle class families that would get maybe a few $100s, but there's a lot of families. If you have medical expenses, you lose your ability to deduct that. Anybody like in a nursing home, they get hit really hard. If you're in a high tax state, pardon me, you can't deduct your state and local taxes. They've reached some compromise, but you're still going to get hammered pretty hard on that. So bottom line here.
If you have, I'm just looking here, the New York Times lead of editorial this morning, this tax bill could cost you a bundle. One of the other parts that they, in addition to what you mentioned, if you have kids in college,
Right.
or if you have a college student loan.
If you have a college student loan, you can't deduct the interest on that. If you're a corporation, you can deduct your interest. If you're a teacher and you buy pencils and pens for your kids, or you get school supplies, which unfortunately is the burden many teachers have to face in low-income areas, they can't deduct that any longer. If you're a corporation and you buy papers and pencils, you can deduct it.
Right.
So it's just not at all a middle-class bill the way the president claims it is. The other thing is that it's changing constantly because the Republicans have to get it within the $1.5 trillion permission they gave themselves to add to the debt. And every time they make an adjustment to try to get votes, it costs them money, so they've got to go elsewhere. And the latest question is whether they're going to try to come up with $400 billion, quote, in savings by getting rid of the individual mandate in health care. And how that works is that if you get rid of the individual mandate, enrollment goes down and the cost of subsidies go down.
But that means...
then those people don't have health care.
I was going to say, but that means those people are without health care.
So they lose health care, and in some cases they get a tax increase, not a tax cut. So they're constantly chasing the ball, trying to figure out how to get this within the $1.5 trillion. But at the core, some corporations are going to do very well. Many corporations aren't, and most Americans are going to not do well. It's not going to be anything that makes a difference in their lives. But if you have a $20 billion estate, you're going to be cool. You don't have to pay a state tax. And basically, if you're somebody in the top 1%, you're going to get several $100,000 tax cut.
How do they square adding, even under reconciliation, adding $1.5 trillion to the debt with their reputation for being deficit hawks?
Well, they don't have an earned reputation to be deficit hawks. But
they claim it. I guess
they claim it, and of course the deficit went up under Reagan. It went up under Bush. It went down under down under Clinton, and even with Obama, who faced the collapse of the economy that was inherited in the Bush administration, the percentage of debt to GDP went from like 10% down to 3%. So, a lot of us on the Democratic side actually think you got to pay your bills. It's like,
hello.
Right. And what's sad about this is that there are a number of my Republican colleagues who are serious about the deficit. Take Senator Corker, for instance. Mm-hmm. All right, and they take that seriously. But what's happened under Paul Ryan is that they've abandoned any commitment to the deficit if that gets in the way of them lowering taxes for the 1% or for corporations. And that means the middle class is going to lose.
And they'll just pile it on. They also operate, don't they, under this myth that we're not really adding to the deficit because by cutting taxes on the wealthy, that's going to stimulate economic growth, which is going to grow the economy and more than take care of that.
Right.
Woman.
That's the faith-based explanation they have for how.
Right.
Reducing
How's
revenue increases revenue. Well, it doesn't work. I mean, the economists have studied that, and we've actually had examples to show that it doesn't work. I mean, first of all, just on a practical level, if you do give a middle-class tax cut, a family that's going paycheck to paycheck, and they get a little more money, they're going to spend it because they're trying to pay their bills. If you happen to be in that 1/10 of 1%, and you get another couple of $1 million a year because of a huge tax cut, you've got enormous discretion, and you might spend it on some luxuries, but most they have the capacity to save it, not invest it.
Yeah,
so
they've got everything they need.
Yeah,
they're more likely to pour it into.
So if the goal is to help the middle class,
investment.
You've got to lower the middle class tax burden. And if the goal is to stimulate the economy, you've got to have the money go to where it will be spent and recirculated in the economy. And the top end is not the way to do either of those things.
The Senate, do we know anything about what they're going to release today?
I don't. What we know is it's not going to be the House.
It's a moving target,
right.
Too.
And what's happening in the House, when you talk to some of my Republican colleagues, is they in addition to the faith-based justification that you just articulated, They basically have given up in trying to write a serious bill. What they believe is they've got an existential political challenge. They've got to pass something, anything that they can call a tax bill. So however bad it is, they're just looking the other way so that they can claim that they've met their commitment to have a tax cut bill.
Right. Okay. So there's a lot of talk about what impact. So the Tuesday, you just have to admit, was a blowout for the Democrats. I mean, Republicans lost on every front across the board. And now that the conversation is what impact that may have on the tax bill. It either makes Republicans more determined to get something done before the end of the year, or it says, hey, we got some problems, political problems here, that maybe we better be careful about this tax bill, because if it does hurt a lot of these suburban voters particularly, they're going to be even more pissed off.
Well,
so how do you think Tuesday impacts the possible passage of a tax bill?
Well, I think it does some of both, because I think for the party, they failed on health care, and if they fail on taxes, which is their signal issue. And by the way, cutting taxes, this is not a tax reform bill. I mean, that's hard.
Thank you. No, it is not.
It's a tax cut bill largely directed to corporations in the top 1%, okay? That, for Republicans, should be like falling off a log. That should be easy, but they're having an incredibly hard time. Now, in this election, they're as a result of the election, they're going to want to pass something. It's going to put immense additional pressure on them to get anything out the door. But any of those members, Republican members who are in the high tax states, where they're going to lose that ability to deduct, that's a direct tax increase to folks in California, to folks in New Jersey, and other of those states, Minnesota, Vermont, actually. Those members, by taking that vote, I think are going to have a scarlet letter on their forehead, and they are going to make what are already tough races for them maybe impossible races.
Adding up all the challenges, do you think that they're going to get something out by the end of the year?
I suspect they may get something out of the House, because I think they believe they have to pass it. And what they're showing day by day is that they're willing to compromise their own goals as long as they get something
get a bill out.
Right. And they'll call it what they want.
But the Senate's
it's going to stink.
The Senate's a different story, right? I mean, they couldn't get, as we know, you mentioned repeal earlier, they couldn't get even 50 votes for repeal of Obamacare, as popular, I mean, as much as they've been talking about that. So is it certain that they get 50 votes for tax cuts?
No, I don't think it is. I think there may be a few people over there on the Republican side that take seriously the fiscal responsibility argument. You know, think about it for a second. We're literally passing a tax cut. That's what they're proposing, $1.5 trillion tax cut, largely to the high end. And we're borrowing money, and we're going to make our kids and our grandkids pay for it. I mean, how do you justify that? I mean, we need tax reform. I'm for that. We need relief for the middle class. But we, if we're going to be serious, can't make our kids pay for any adjustments in the tax code. We've got to reform it, simplify it, make it better, but have largely the benefit go to the middle class. And we could simplify the corporate tax rate and make that revenue neutral.
You know, here's maybe a dumb question, but as someone who's totally outside the system, every time I hear about middle class tax cuts for the middle class, which certainly I'm for too, cutting the income tax that's not the number one tax the middle class.
Payroll tax.
That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Why aren't people talking about the payroll tax?
Well, I think two things. One is that it's so linked to Social Security that you've got to make certain you don't want to compromise the Social Security trust fund.
But of course, we know there are other ways of taking care of that.
Right. Bill, actually think you're right that for many people, the biggest burden they have is the payroll tax, especially at the low income. In the middle, you make a good point, but that hasn't been at all on the radar with the Republican majority.
Or Democrat. I mean, I don't hear anybody talking about it. I'm just curious as to why they.
Well, you're right. And if you're a self-employed person, it's close to 15%. So you've got some people who are self-employed, a small business, and that payroll tax, they have to pay both sides of it, the employer and the employee.
Now, you would not know it if the Trump administration had anything to do with it. They are trying to keep it a big, big, big secret, Congressman. But this is the open enrollment period now for the Affordable Care Act. Yes, despite Donald Trump's rhetoric, it still exists. It's still out there. It still offers you and your family protection. You can still sign up for it. There's still affordable plans available, but they don't want you to know about it. They have done zero marketing or zero publicity about the fact that this is the open enrollment
In fact,
period.
they're like shutting down the website on certain days, like over the weekends.
And they took the money away from the people who are supposed to help people will sign up. But it's open. The open period is November 1 to December 15.
Right. Yeah, well, so everybody out there who wants to check out what health care is available, you've got until December 15 to do it, to look at what plans are available.
Which is a shorter
and what you
period
can do.
than was originally.
That's right. So, number one, check it out. Go to the website and do what you can. Number two, the point you're making, what Donald Trump and the Republican majority was unable to do in daylight, that is, have a vote to repeal health care, they're trying to do in the dead of night. In everything that the Trump administration is doing is about trying to sabotage the effectiveness of the Affordable Care Act. Stopping the cost sharing reductions, pulling advertising from open enrollment, really hassling states that are trying to do the right thing. And what's really pretty cynical about that is that, number one, folks who would have access to health care may not get it because of the obstacles being put in their way. But second, the lower the enrollment, the higher the cost shift. Those folks are going to who don't get their health care, they're going to show up at our hospitals, and the hospitals are going to treat them. And then what happens is, if you're getting employer-sponsored health care or buying it on your own, your premiums go up because you end up having to pay for the uncompensated care. So that is a pretty cynical approach to a healthcare system. And by the way, the whole approach on healthcare, this is the bankruptcy of the Republican approach on this. They talk about the cost. That's a problem. But their solution is to take people off of healthcare instead of addressing high prescription drug prices, excessive procedures, things that we really have to reform in the healthcare system to bring that cost curve down. But their approach is, hey, we'll just take 24 million people off of healthcare. That'll lower the cost. Well, you know what? It really doesn't do that. It just creates an enormous cost shift and a lot of heartache for lots of families in this country.
And we know that Donald Trump himself and some Republican members of the Senate, maybe the House, and I guess the House too, are trying to kind of resurrect the effort, maybe not to totally repeal Obamacare, but to take away the individual mandate as part of this tax cut bill.
Right. But that's to get about $400 billion to deliver as tax cuts to other Americans.
How likely is it that they are able to insert this? I know there's some other Republicans who are saying, no, wait a minute. We already fought that battle. Let's not bring that baby back.
I would put nothing beyond what Paul Ryan will do to get this bill done,
really,
including the individual mandate. Okay? But that is toxic. And what does that do to Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, two courageous senators, John McCain, who voted against their repeal of health care, when now they have a tax bill that ends the individual mandate and means that millions of Americans are now not going to be getting health care. So they would be required to vote on a tax bill that essentially accomplishes the destruction of the health care plan that they just defended.
So how long before, under the leadership of your senior senator, we get, I guess your junior senator, we get single payer?
Bernie's working on it, and he's got the goal out there, and I agree with that goal. We have the most expensive healthcare system with fewer people covered than most industrial nations, and the single payer approach, Medicare for all, is the aspiration. How do we get there? Frankly, I think a solid step for Democrats is that we should be right now saying we want to let folks 50 and older and corporations buy into Medicare.
Buy into Medicare.
Yeah, that people understand Medicare. You don't have to have a whole new system. You don't get into some of the debates about how do you do the single payer. We had that challenge in Vermont. And I'm a proponent of single payer, but I'm a proponent of making progress. So I'd like to see the Democrats really get behind a Brian Higgins bill that would be Medicare buy-in. And by the way, that helps employers. Let them buy in, too. If they're getting health care for their employees and their employees are over 50, let them buy into Medicare.
Do you, and would that include a public plan option as part of?
Well, in effect, that is a public option. If you're buying into Medicare, that's much like a public option. And, of course, it's too bad that when we passed the health care bill, we did not succeed in including a public option. That's something we lost in the Senate side. Thank you, Joe Lieberman.
Oh yeah, I forgot. That's right, Joe Lieberman. Yeah, and I have to say, to be fair, President Obama gave up the fight for that too at some point. So one of your colleagues, Congressman, made a big announcement yesterday about a vote that the House of Representatives is going to have sometime before Christmas. Here is Congressman Al Green.
I now announce that before Christmas, there will be a vote on the chief inciter of racism, bigotry, hatred, xenophobia, sexism, ethnocentrism. There will be a vote in the U.S. House of Representatives, Mr. Speaker, on the impeachment of the president.
How are you going to vote?
We'll see. I mean, the bottom line here is that I agree with a lot of what Congressman Green said. I mean, I think Trump is an extraordinarily divisive person. In the question here, he got elected. And do you resort to impeachment where we have an incredible burden as a practical political matter? And that's the question that I have. The other question I have is this. Democrats won on Tuesday, and we have right to celebrate because the candidate for governor did a lot better in places than President Obama did. Mm-hmm. And Ralph Northam is a good man, but he's no Barack Obama when it comes to being on the stump. So it's a good.
Very polite. Who is? Very politely said.
The point is
a good point.
Who is? But the voters, it shows the movement. Yeah. But here's the question I have, and it really goes to impeachment too. Democrats have to be more than anti-Trump, okay? Mm-hmm. That dynamic with Trump has got its own vitality, and it's real. But it's not where we are going to win. We've got to earn people's trust by coming out with a constructive agenda. I think we should be concrete. We should be for Medicare for all. We should be for an infrastructure plan that's paid for, and we should be willing to say how we're going to pay for it. We should be all in on not just college education, but job training. We've got millions of people who don't have jobs and where there are jobs and they need skills, and we are lagging behind in that. So there are concrete things that the Democrats should be advocating that actually can boost the economy. And I want us to push forward on that and not just ride on the wave of sentiment about President Trump. And to some extent, that's one of the dangers of being all in on the impeachment. Mm-hmm. And bottom line, too, the real question is going to be what happens with the Mueller investigation, because that's where the questions are about whether there was some conduct that really crossed the line. And I think that you've got to have the benefit of that investigation. And a lot of us have confidence in Mueller, that he's legit. Let's get that evidence before we decide what the outcome is.
He certainly is off to a good start with Manafort and Gates and Papadopoulos, and now word that he's about to close in on Michael Flynn and Son. So, Congressman, don't wait so long before you come back next time.
All right, it's great to see you.
Great to
Peter,
see you, too.
Glad you're doing well.
Peter Welch from
He looks good.
Vermont.
I can vouch for it. He looks better than Bill.
This is the Bill Press Show.
I wanted to find a bank with a purpose. I wanted to find a place that would take my money and not use it to cause the financial crisis, but to fix the financial crisis and to help end income inequality.
The people that we employ are usually clients right off the streets. They don't have an account, but Amalgamated is willing to get that started for them.
Their reputation supporting the working man, I think, speaks for itself. This is a bank that cares for their customers, and I appreciate that.
We were able to access a construction loan through the bank's programs, and that loan has helped us house 28 families in the community.
Amalgamated is a bank that was started for and about working people.
Many of our customers have a deep commitment to advocating for social and economic justice. We share that commitment, and we're not afraid to stand up and say that we need to change some of the way that the country does business.
Giving you everything you need to fight the Trump administration. This is The Bill Press Show. Live at youtube.com/The Bill Press Show.
The big wave keeps rolling on, and Democrats are surfing it coast to coast. Hello, everybody. What do you say? On a Thursday, November 9, so good to see you today. And thank you for joining us here on The Bill Press Show, coming to you live from Washington, D.C., our nation's capital. And if you go to the Capitol building and turn left or right, depending on which direction you're coming from, you just go about 6 blocks, and whoa, there we are, right in the heart of the action, in the shadow of the Capitol Dome, with all the news of the day on the political front, on the sexual harassment front, on the tax cut front, and lots more going on. We'll tell you all about it, and look forward to your telling us what you think about the news of the day. Send us your comments on Twitter, as always, at BP Show. Alex Seitz-Wald from NBC News will be here as a friend of Bill for this hour, and as soon as he gets here. Have we sent out the patrol yet?
We're close.
National Guard, stand by. And then Congressman John Yarmuth from Kentucky joining us a little bit later to bring us all the news from the Bourbon Caucus of the United States House of Representatives. Again, want to hear from you at BP Show. Send us your on Twitter at BP Show. And we'll jump into the news of the day, get your comments, but first...
This is the Full Court Press.
Just a couple of other stories making news. Now, about a year ago, we did this story about the Chinese spacecraft, their space station, which has gone out of control. It's been up there floating around for since a year ago. Well, they have now narrowed it down. We know when it's going to come down. They say that it's going to come down between January and March of 2018. And...
where?
I'm glad you asked. Countries at risk include Spain, Italy, Turkey, India, and parts of the United States.
What? Why can't they land it in the ocean?
Well, it's out of control. They have no control over it. It's just going to keep spinning out of control until it hurtles back to the earth at dangerous speeds. And they can't control where it goes.
Oh, Donald Trump's over there right now. Wasn't he fix this?
Yeah, right. So just keep your head up in the clouds January through March of next year.
I hope by then they're going to be able to narrow it down a little bit.
I would hope so. I would hope so.
Yeah.
A report from Billionaire Bonanza is a think tank, took a look at how much money the richest people in the world are making. This is not good. The 3 richest people in the United States, Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, and Warren Buffett, own as much wealth as the bottom half of the entire U.S. population. In other words, 160 million people.
Billion or million?
Million.
Million. And they are 4 of them?
3 of them.
3. Oh.
Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, Warren Buffett own as much as the bottom 160 million people in America. It's the same thing. So you got 160 million people.
Yeah, right.
Own as much as those 3 men.
But why isn't Donald Trump on this? I thought he was worth $100 billion, right?
I wouldn't look too deep into his finances. That might not be good. Bill, you have an Amazon Echo, Alexa.
I do.
Well, you got to be careful because one man in Hamburg, he went out for drinks, and he got a call from the cops because the cops showed up at his house, kicked down his door to find out that Alexa had turned all the lights on and started blaring loud music while he was awake, totally unprovoked. So the neighbors called, and they thought that there was a party going on. It turns out it was just Alexa all by herself.
You got to be careful of Alexa. She's got a mind of her own.
I know.
Oh, no. She'll kick in sometimes with stuff that you hadn't asked for.
You got to be careful.
You know, and sometimes if you ask for the weather, I ask for the weather in Washington, D.C., and she'll give me the weather like in St. Paul, Minnesota. Yeah,
On your radio, on TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
All right, indeed. We are still celebrating, and we're going to continue to celebrate. And there's a lot to celebrate. The results of Tuesday's blue wave, they're calling it. There's a blue wipeout nationwide. Democrats winning at every level, from city council all the way up to governorships, and in red states and blue states as well, small towns and big cities. Hello, everybody. Good to see you today, Thursday, November 9. It is the Bill Press Show. We're live with you from our studio on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., joining you online at YouTube, youtube.com/The Bill Press Show. Also joining you, of course, on Free Speech TV, and with you on the great WCPT, the progressive voice of Chicago. We've had lots and lots of news so far about the election and comments about the election. By the way, Alex Seitz-Wald, I think I mentioned, from NBC News, will be joining us here shortly as a friend of Bill. Then a good friend of ours, Congressman John Yarmuth from Kentucky, will be along for the last half hour together. But meanwhile, you have been commenting on the news of the day. Let's catch up on some of those comments before we jump back in. Jamie?
I want to focus on our Twitter, on Twitter at BP Show. Yesterday, during the show, we put up a poll. We were high off the Democrats' blue wave election wins. We asked you, our Twitter followers, are the Democrat wins from yesterday's election day indicative of how 2020 will go? Thinking all the way to 2020. So we were asking
just
you.
Leapfrogged over 2018.
Yeah, forget 2018.
No.
77% of, hold on, 77% of you said yes, that those wins just the other day will be indicative of what we may see in 2020. 23% of you said no. Couple of comments. Our buddy Fred says, all yesterday's election results prove is that some Republicans are actually embarrassed being in the same party as Nazis and Klansmen.
And clowns.
And clowns. At Darian_Dave, we need new leadership in the Democratic Party. Sorry, but Pelosi is toxic for a young electorate. So he's thinking about how Nancy Pelosi may reflect in 2020.
Well, it didn't prove that way in Virginia, I have to say. The
That's true.
The young electorate came out of Virginia overwhelmingly, something like 70 or 80% for Ralph Northam yesterday.
Well, perhaps we'll see if young people get fed up with how Nancy Pelosi is lukewarm responding to Donald Trump. So we'll see how that ends up. One more comment off the poll yesterday. Joel says, "Where's my shrug option? After November 2016, I'm hesitant to say anything definitive."
True.
That's a good point.
True.
Keep those comments coming in on the blue wave, on Trump in China, on tax reform, whatever you want to weigh in on Twitter at BP Show, and in the YouTube chat room, youtube.com/The Bill Press Show.
Okay. And I would just say that that the opinions expressed by Jamie Benson are the opinions of Jamie Benson. I don't think Nancy Pelosi's been lukewarm on Donald Trump. I think she's been pretty strong.
You think so?
On most issues against Donald Trump. She made a deal with him to keep the government open, which I thought was a good deal at the time, and she wanted to make a deal on DACA, but the fact that she was willing to make and he reneged, those two deals doesn't mean she's been lukewarm, in my humble opinion, on Donald Trump. But let's go back to Tuesday, because the results of Tuesday, look, we focus on Virginia, and that's great. Virginia is so important. But as we've been discussing this morning, the real, I think, stunning news, and the more you look at it, the more impressed you've got to be by the breadth and the depth of the Democratic progressive wins on Tuesday, because it wasn't just Virginia, New Jersey. It wasn't just this New York, right? This little stretch of the eastern seaboard, mid-Atlantic. No. It was nationwide. And it wasn't just those big races, governor of Virginia, governor of New Jersey, mayor of New York City. No. It was city council races. It was mayor's races. It was state legislative races across the board, in big cities, in small towns, in counties, wherever progressives had organized and put up candidates and were fighting the good fight. And there was an energy that we haven't seen before. One reflection, in Virginia, the turnout in Virginia statewide. So the last time they had a election for governor, Virginia is one of those weird states. I think it's only one of two where the governor serves one term, 4-year term. That's it. Can't run for re-election. Boom. So the last time was 2013. The turnout Tuesday was 16% over what it was in 2013. And I mentioned Charlottesville, Virginia. University of Virginia, the turnout was up 13%. And over 31, I got it backwards, 31%. And in Virginia, over 1/3 of the people who came out to vote told the people from the networks, the election watchers, that they came out to vote not for Ralph Northam, not against Ed Gillespie. For Ed Gillespie. They came out to vote against Donald Trump. It just blows me away that Donald Trump had that impact. And again, this is the first time since he was elected. Yeah. In fact, it was like the first anniversary, one day before, that voters had a chance to come out at some level, somewhere, somehow, and express their reaction to having Donald Trump in the White House. And what basically they said was, we don't like this guy. We don't think he belongs there. We're Republicans. We're Democrats. We're Americans. We're embarrassed by him. And we want to cast a protest vote. And the way to cast a protest vote was to vote against anybody who was in any way connected to Donald Trump. And in Virginia, Ed Gillespie was lock, stock, and barrel.
Yeah, I know we've talked a lot about Virginia, and I know this is way, way bigger than Virginia. But the Virginia point is Republicans, I'm not going to say they should have won Virginia, but they definitely could have won Virginia.
Yeah, no.
Like that was a winnable election for Republicans.
Virginia's purple at best.
Yeah. And you look across the country, right? You saw big wins not only in places like Virginia, which, as you said, is purple, but you look in Georgia, you look in North Carolina. Chris Christie was the governor of New Jersey, was a Republican. Granted, he's got a
not very popular, but
16% approval rating at this point, but still, Republicans can win in these states. And so it not only is it sort of highlighting the fact that Donald Trump is toxic, but also the Republican Party, which has bent over backwards to allow Donald Trump to act the way that he's acted as president. We've had not quite a year now of him being president, but he has been enabled by the Republican Party, and people are just fed up.
Well, they've got him. It's the party of Trump now. It is the party of Trump, and this certainly raises big questions looking into 2018. The chair of the Republican National Committee, Ronna Romney McDaniel, was out yesterday trying, Peter, to make the point that she, by the way, she's really bad.
She's pretty bad.
She's pretty bad. Trying to make the point that this was no big deal.
We're back to status quo. Republicans won 5 special elections, including Utah last night, that they should have won, and Democrats won 2 governorships that they should have won. So nothing really changed. They're going to try and create this big narrative. They should have won Virginia. They should have won New Jersey.
Yeah, no. Nice try. No cigar.
She's doing what she's got to do, but it's just not truthful.
Yeah, that spin is so weak. On the other hand, Congressman Scott Taylor from Vermont, Republican Vermont, says
Virginia.
I'm sorry, what am I saying? Vermont from Virginia, said basically no. Let's just be honest.
Logically, and if we want to be intellectually consistent, in 2009 when Governor Bob McDonnell won Virginia resoundingly, I mean, it was a referendum on President Obama, and if the results last night were the opposite, we would have said that as well. So I think that you have to attribute some of these things, given the exit polls, given the Democrat turnout.
Yes, it was a referendum on President Trump. And what turned people off about the Republican Party and Donald Trump?
You can certainly attribute some things to perhaps the candidate and Gillespie as well, too, but there was an overwhelming thing that was looming large, and that was, I think it was the divisive rhetoric.
The divisive rhetoric of Donald Trump, again, raising the question for 2018, as Republicans go into 2018, what do we do about Donald Trump? Do we run with him or do we run without him? But the broader and bigger news for Tuesday may have been not to put down the importance of Virginia, New Jersey, and New York City, but when you look about all the people that Donald Trump has attacked, the categories of people Donald Trump has attacked: people of color, women, refugees, transgender Americans, gay and lesbian Americans. They are the people who thrived, who really soared in Tuesday's results. And I know we're going to forget a few, but just look at them. I mean, some of the ones that we think of off the top of women, right? The first two Latinas elected to the Virginia House of Delegates. The first Asian American woman elected to the House of Delegates in Virginia. Among people of color, the first African American woman elected as mayor, or African American, period, a woman elected as mayor of Charlotte, North Carolina. Vi Lyles, I believe,
yeah.
Right? Her name is, yeah, right. In Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota, the first African American male elected as mayor. Hoboken, New Jersey, the first Sikh elected as mayor. Where's that turban? You saw him on the streets yesterday.
Yeah.
Right? Out there, he's the first Sikh mayor of New Jersey, and one of the first in the entire nation. I guess there have been others, but I don't know who they might have been, but certainly the first in New Jersey. Among the LGBT Americans, many wins. The first transgender person elected to the Virginia House of Delegates, 2 transgender Americans elected to the Minneapolis City Council, Seattle electing its first lesbian mayor. I mentioned earlier that in Palm Springs, California, with 2 new members being elected there, the entire City Council of Palm Springs, California, which has been a little gay mecca for a long time,
sure, yeah,
is now the entire City Council entirely LGBTQ. One other person of color, Helena Montana, elected the first African-American mayor, who happens to be a refugee from Liberia.
Yeah.
So that's right. Now, what am I thinking? He couldn't run for president.
No, he wasn't born here. Well, it didn't stop Ted Cruz, but...
That's true. But he could be elected to local office.
Sure.
Yeah, for sure. Same thing goes.
No, I mean, it's astounding.
Yeah, across the board, right?
And these are people
all the people Donald Trump hates.
Exactly. These are people who have been under attack by the Trump administration since day one, since the day he took office. LGBTQ members, people from other countries, people of Middle Eastern descent. You mentioned the mayor of Hoboken who wears the turban. I mean, that has got to freak Donald Trump out.
Oh, God. Yeah. Yeah.
Which makes me happy.
I wonder if it's near that golf course of his.
Oh, I hope so. God, I hope so.
That would be great.
I hope there's a big sign of the mayor, the picture of the mayor right near the golf course.
And the other thing I want to give a shout out to, because the energy and the leadership and the creativity came on Tuesday not from the top down. You know, it wasn't Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and Tom Perez who orchestrated all of this. These were the grassroots organization. Some of them new since Donald Trump was elected. Some of them have found new life. You've got MoveOn.org and Emily's List have been around for a while, ACLU as well. And then you got the new groups like Our Revolution and Run for Something and Indivisible. They were all out there. They were organizing, recruiting candidates, and they saw this as their first opportunity. And boy, did they succeed. In Georgia, Red Georgia flipped 2 House seats. In Washington State, in the 45th, flipped that 1 Senate seat, creating now an entire blue wall down the Pacific coast of the United States. I mentioned earlier, I spoke to Larry Cohen, who's the chairman of the chair of the board of Our Revolution yesterday, was ecstatic about what happened up in Massachusetts, in several towns, but particularly in Somerville, Massachusetts. The Our Revolution chapter there, the Massachusetts chapter, 7 members of that chapter decided from Somerville, Massachusetts, that they were going to take on and challenge the entire city council. 7 out of 7. They put up 7 candidates. They fought like hell. They organized like hell, and they won all 7 seats.
Yeah.
Now, you talk about. By the way, I hope they realize that that's not always the case in politics. You know, you don't always win every race you get in.
Yeah, that's not how it works all the time.
They got into 7 races, and they won all 7. So across the board, it was again astounding, I think, and stunning, the depth and the breadth of the Democratic wins at every level, from city council all the way up to 2 very important governorships. Alex Seitz-Wald covers all of these issues as the crack political reporter for NBC News. I'm making it into our studio this morning. Hello, Alex. Good to see you.
Good morning, Bill. Thanks for having me.
What's your read? Let me put it this way. What impact does what happened Tuesday have on the Republican and the Democratic Party? Where the Republicans go from here? Where do Democrats go from here?
I think it's huge in both parties, and for totally different reasons. For Democrats, just to start out with, there was a level of panic setting in, I think, a level of desperation. People really needed to win.
Nervous Nellies.
Very nervous Nellies. I mean, I was talking to people who were saying, if we lost this, my fundraising is going to dry up. I'm going to have to start looking for a new job. There's going to be demands for heads to roll. I think for a party that was already going through a lot of introspection, to say lightly, or circular firing squad to say it worse, this would have been a real disaster. So this is a huge shot in the arm. It makes people a lot happier. It's going to bring money in, going to get candidates out, going to raise enthusiasm. For Republicans, they've known that Trump is a problem, but they haven't really known it, and now they have to confront it. And it's just the results being so decisive, so much bigger than anyone expected, especially in the suburbs. That has a lot of these Republicans in these key suburban districts in California and New York and Minnesota, all across the country, very nervous right now.
And you saw, as I just mentioned, right, in Virginia, what is it? A little over a third of the voters said they came out to vote against Donald Trump.
Yeah, and the people who said they were influenced by Trump were overwhelmingly, it's like 2-to-1 anti-Donald Trump. So he was clearly a factor in this race.
And again, it's a race that he wasn't really involved in.
Right.
You know, like he sort of made the point to, but he might not have made the point, but Ed Gillespie certainly didn't want him in the race. You know,
and even if he tweeted a couple times, and I think he cut one robocall, but he didn't get in the race directly. But the Gillespie tactics, his message was clearly influenced by Trump. Yeah. And I was looking at some data yesterday that surprised me. Once Gillespie rolled out his first MS-13 ad, where the tattooed Latino guys, his
asserting that Ralph Northam was basically a member of MS-13.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
When he wasn't working with child pornographers, he was a member of MS-13. Essentially, the ad said.
Yeah.
Gillespie's favorables just tanked and never really came back from that. It's a really noticeable numbers. So there was a big backlash in the suburbs, among independents and among the kind of wealthy, educated, white suburban people to that style of campaigning.
Right. So one approach Republicans might have had is, no, we're going to fully embrace Donald Trump and stand with him and put our arm around him and be his guy. Luther Strange tried that. Well, that didn't work. So Ed Gillespie says, no, here's a different approach. We know that for some people, Donald Trump is still very popular, so we don't want to alienate them. So what we'll do is we'll adopt Trump's policies and issues and rhetoric without Donald Trump being present. The famous phrase, whoever came up with it, maybe it was you, Trumpism without Trump.
Yeah, I wish I could take credit for that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Sure. Let's say I did. Yeah.
Yes. You got it. I'm giving you credit for
it. It is a great term.
That didn't work.
Yeah. Well, and
so
this is
who's the first one that's going to run Republican run as the anti-Trump candidate?
I think you'll have a few, and it'll be hard for them to escape. The Gillespie thing is especially troubling if you're a more moderate Republican, because everyone assumed that given his background, he would have...
Because Gillespie's an establishment Republican.
Exactly, right. And everyone knew that. He was a known quantity going into this. He had run before. He had been the RNC chairman. So everyone assumed that all these people in the suburbs would kind of give him, a pass. Okay, he's running these ads, but he doesn't really mean it. And that's what we all believed, and all the pundits, everyone assumed he was running a great campaign, and maybe he was running a really smart campaign. Maybe that was the best he could have done given the cards that he was dealt. But so it's not easy to just blame him as a bad candidate. It's clearly the message. It was clearly the political environment.
Okay. Congressman John Yarmuth is joining us soon, but before he gets here, I just have to ask you, because you and I spent so much time. You were covering the Bernie Sanders campaign. And we have seen in the last week or so, you alluded to it, Donna Brazil's book coming out.
Yeah.
And you remember during the campaign, Bernie was saying, Martin O'Malley was saying, the DNC is in the tank for Hillary. They were right, weren't they?
There was some things that they were right about. Yeah. I mean, the center of her accusation is this deal, which I actually obtained between Hillary Clinton and the DNC it was signed in August of 2015. So this was, months before September 2015, months before the primary. And it really gave the Clinton campaign a significant control over the DNC in exchange for money. At the time, the DNC was in horrible debt.
Did Bernie have the same deal?
No, Bernie did not have the same deal. Bernie was not even made aware that this deal was cut with the Clinton campaign, which I think that to me is the most
So
dangerous
I just
part.
want to point out, dwell on it for a second. So when Clinton people say, as some have said when I've been debating them on CNN the last couple of days, that Bernie and Hillary just had the same deal with the DNC, this is no big deal. They're lying, aren't they?
That is not true. And then they will say, well, they had the opportunity to cut the same deal, which is maybe in theory true, but not really in practice at all. And so what you end up is with a situation, regardless of who was offered the deal or whatnot, where one candidate had significant control over the referee, the DNC, and other candidates didn't. Now, does that equal an effect on the primary? I haven't seen evidence of that, but the deal in and of itself is, I agree. I think it's shady. I think it's a bad look, and Tom Perez, the current DNC chairman, has said this. That's what Donna Brazil was saying.
He said it again on our show Tuesday morning. He was here.
Yeah. And he said that going forward, they're not going to let something like this happen again. Right. I mean, I think objectively, it sets up a situation where the more money you are willing to put into the DNC, the more favors you could get out of it, the more control you could have over the party.
Right. And I agree. It didn't impact the primaries, which are conducted by the states in the states.
Right.
It didn't impact that vote, but it did impact the scheduling of debates, the timing of debates, who knows what else, right?
Yeah, and
things that were leading up to the convention, speaking slot, who knows? Or what the DNC was saying at the time, because the Clinton campaign had some control over press releases, right, that was put out by the chair of the DNC.
Yeah, here's my fundamental thing on this to get past what all the Clinton campaign is saying. Would you feel comfortable with the referee being paid for by one team and not the others? Regardless of what happens, that just doesn't. That's obviously a problem.
All right. Now, having said that, right, doesn't Tuesday sort of make Donna Brazil's story so what?
I think it does have that effect. Yeah, it knocks down. As somebody joked to me, I think yesterday, Wednesday was the last day of 2016. You know, like maybe we can put this stuff to bed. And I also think Brazil has overcranked some of her statements in a way that does a little bit of a disservice to her message, which I think is an important message. But yeah, we'll see if that kind of tamps down what she's saying.
It is telling that like the DNC clearly has a lot of problems.
Yeah.
And I think that they've taken a lot of steps this year to fix those problems. Nothing really helps those problems along like having an opponent like Donald Trump to like help get your act together, right? Like whatever happened on Tuesday, I think we can point to the dislike of Donald Trump and the disapproval ratings of Donald Trump more than like the DNC getting their act together. So they've been given the gift of time to sort of work this through and figure it out while they have a guy like him that they're running against.
On the other hand, if Northam had lost Tuesday,
oh boy,
everybody would be saying, "See, Donna, you know the whole thing. You know, Donna's who kept it going." And it
Perriello would have won. That would have been the whole thing that was coming out.
Final before we welcome in Congressman Yarmuth. So finally, Donna's other bombshell revelation was that she considered Plan B when Hillary fainted on September 11, 2016, replacing the nominee with Joe Biden.
Joe Biden, Cory Booker, yeah.
And Cory Booker, right. She didn't have the authority to do that.
She did not have the authority to. She had the authority to call a meeting where maybe that could have happened, but she didn't have the authority to unilaterally do it. No.
And why Joe Biden and not Bernie Sanders?
Another question. She kind of says Bernie would have. Apparently, she says that Jeff Weaver called her, by the way, the day after that just to check in and presumably offer Bernie services just in case he should be needed.
How can we help you?
Yeah, but I guess the idea was to pull in somebody who had not been in the primary.
Who had not been in the primary, exactly.
Yeah.
Who had not run, who had not gotten even one delegate in Philadelphia. No,
yeah.
That pissed me off. At any rate.
Well, it's a great point. Like, she has few friends after this book. I mean, in the Democratic Party left, it's amazing. She's managed to piss off all sides.
She really threw a lot of people under the bus and pissed off a lot of people.
Yeah.
You're right.
Today, House and Ways and Means Committee in the Senate. I'm sorry, the Ways and Means Committee in the House scheduled to vote on that tax. They call it tax reform bill. It's not. It's a big series of tax cuts. We'll find out what's in it for the middle class Americans, if anything, from Congressman John Yarmuth from Kentucky. Joining us next.
Racism, bigotry, hatred, xenophobia, sexism, ethnocentrism. There will be a vote.
Get social with Bill Press. Like us at facebook.com/Bill Press Show. This is the Bill Press Show.
Hey friends, it's Bill Press here, and I want to tell you about an exciting new venture that we're embarking on here at the Bill Press Show and ask for your help. First, I don't have to tell you, with Donald Trump in the White House, it's more important than ever to keep strong progressive voices out there on the media every single day. But you know what? It's also harder than ever for a couple of reasons. First, because there are so few progressive radio stations. Second, because station owners just won't put progressive voices on the air. And third, because even YouTube won't allow any ads on on commentary, progressive commentary that's in any way political. I mean, you can't even mention the word war without YouTube pulling that ad revenue. And of course, without those ads, without that revenue, we can't raise the money we need to, pay the rent, to pay salaries, to turn on the lights, and keep those strong progressive shows coming your way every day as we have for the last 12 years. So we've embarked on something new, and we need your help. We've just started putting up all exclusive content on a new platform called Patreon. Now, by becoming a Bill Press Show subscriber for a very low monthly fee, you'll be able to go to Patreon and get exclusive content, newsmaker interviews, political, progressive commentary, political columns that you won't be able to get anywhere else. And pretty soon, you'll be able to enjoy our very special podcast called The Making of Bernie Sanders. And again, it's all on Patreon, Patreon. So please go to Patreon today and sign up, become a subscriber to the Bill Press Show. Together, we can make a difference. Together, we will keep the resistance alive. Together, We will fight back against the destructive policies of Donald Trump, but we can't do it without your help. So please go to Patreon today and sign up. Thank you.
Look at you. You're at the top of your game. At work or at play, you're unstoppable. Nothing can throw you off track. Oh, hey, she's cute. Nice going, man. Things are going great for you. You've earned a night out. Good drinks, good friends. Yeah, we can go ahead and call this a good night. Wait, is that your car? Uh-oh. Not smart. Yeah, I saw that coming. Say goodbye to her. Ouch, that'll hurt your bank account. You're looking at around 10 grand in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. I hope you like eating frozen dinners. Alone. Let's try this again. Smart move. Because buzz driving is drunk driving.
Live video, Bill's commentary, the best clips from the show, all in one place. YouTube.com/The Bill Press Show.
Thursday, November 9, The Bill Press Show, Washington, D.C. is where we start out. We end up with all of you, wherever you are in this great land of ours, online, on the radio, on television. We're there with you with all the news of the day. Brought to you today by the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. We all live better because of the good work of the Teamsters Union. I had lunch yesterday with Brett Caldwell, who's the communications director for the Teamsters, telling me about their latest effort, which is to organize the cannabis workers in California.
Wow. Come on, really?
How about that, man? They are ahead of the curve. And he showed me, we have on our website the logo for the Teamsters. Mm-hmm. You take the logo for the Teamsters and you put the green cannabis leaf right in the middle of it. And that's the logo for the new Teamsters operation in California. God bless America. Go to Teamsters.org and check it out. Alex Seitz-Wald here with us from NBC News, and we're joined by our good friend from Kentucky, Kentucky's 3rd Congressional District, Congressman John Yarmuth. Hey, Congressman, good to see you.
It's great to be here. The band is back together. Peter's back.
Yes, sir. We're all here.
Peter
awesome.
is back. Happy birthday.
Thank
you.
you.
By the way.
Thank you.
Birthday.
We're always glad to have the chair of the Bourbon Caucus in, and one of your colleagues was in earlier, Congressman Peter Welch, who said the Bourbon Caucus was alive and well last night.
Absolutely. Last night we had an event, and Peter was there, and we're having a Bourbon Caucus event next week on the Hill for members only.
Those are the fun parties, right?
Yeah.
Well, I'll have you know, you mentioned the band is back together. When I was out, Bill visited me in the hospital and brought me some good Kentucky bourbon.
Excellent.
So,
well, that's a cure for everything.
Yeah. I got here earlier than was expected.
I want you to know I got in a lot of trouble.
Also true.
And also, while we're at it, so to smuggle the bourbon into the hospital, I bought this, thinking I could put it in here and nobody would know what was in that little. That's true.
His plans were foiled.
My plans were foiled.
Sniffer dogs? How'd they catch you?
It's a long story. So I do have to ask you, in light of
it does look different in an IV needle.
Yeah, right.
We, Congressman, are thinking about sending Peter out to Madison, Wisconsin, to maybe give a few tips to our colleague and friend Mark Pocan, who just had triple bypass surgery yesterday.
Major open heart surgery.
Yeah. Have you heard anything from him?
No, apparently he's doing very well, and we wish him the best. Mark's a great guy, a great member, so he'll be fine.
Right. And we didn't realize, you've been in so often, we've never had a chance to discuss this, what a a living threat you have in Louisville with lawn clippings. So I want to know, how do you get along with your neighbors? Are you
much
careful
better,
not to...
much better than Rand does.
Boy,
That's Bowling Green, and that's
it's
a different. Yeah, that's where the massacre was. Remember Kellyanne Conway, the Bowling Green massacre?
Oh yeah,
yeah,
right.
Yeah, they
never forget.
That's right.
I mean,
which of course never happened.
Story, huh?
Yeah,
I mean,
it is a weird story. Yeah,
and you know, Senator Paul knows 6 broken ribs. I mean, even a cracked rib, as we all know, you can't.
Right, and now apparently he has some
painful.
issues with fluid in the cavity, and so a few complications. But yeah, I mean, you know, there's too much anger in this country. I mean, people get angry. I think everybody needs anger management training.
Yeah.
Right.
It's true.
Mandatory.
Or more bourbon.
Or more bourbon.
That's right.
Exactly.
All right. So tax cuts up today. It looks like they're going to ram it through the House Ways and Means Committee. What you read, and
yeah, that's what it looks like. The members I talked to, the Republican members, of course, we're not, you know, we're bystanders here, and we Democrats, the Republican members seem to think what they're saying is we're just going to vote it out of here. We're going to end up swallowing if the Senate is able to pass something, we're going to end up swallowing that, so we don't care. I mean, that's basically what they're saying.
God,
doesn't matter what the details are.
How many hearings have they had on this bill?
Absolutely zero.
Wow.
Absolutely zero.
It's only the entire U.S. economy involved.
And of course, you know, and they're rewriting it as they go, and you know, the manager's amendment is apparently being revised almost minute to minute. So when it actually gets to the committee, most members will not have seen it. When it gets to the floor, most members will not have read it. So the whole thing's a scam. It's a scam on the American people, and it's a scam on the legislative process.
But how can you say that about massive tax cuts for the middle class?
Yeah, if only. If only. You know, I think it's interesting that the Republicans think that their political fate rests with doing this. Because the way I see it, the only thing, if they get it done, which I still am very, very skeptical of, but if they get it done, the only thing they will have accomplished is paying off their donors. You know, that's all they will have accomplished. And I want to go to the voters next fall with that message. They've been in control of the entire government. What did they do? They gave enormous tax breaks to the people who fund their campaigns. That's it.
That's one accomplishment.
One accomplishment.
Right. Do you think that the kick in the butt that they got on November 7, Tuesday, will, make them more determined to pass a tax bill, or maybe a little more cautious about what's in it?
That's a good question. I wouldn't want to be in their shoes right now. Well, actually, I would never want to be in their shoes. But certainly at this time, because they really are in a Hobson's choice situation where I think, you know, if they pass this thing, it's a huge case to be made against them. That, you know, they lied about it being a tax cut for the middle class. You know, according to Tax Policy Center, in 10 years, 25% of middle class citizens will actually have their taxes increased, and another substantial portion will get no benefit at all, or, you know, less than $100. So it is a scam on the middle class, and very, very dishonest. So they face having to defend that next year, or they have to defend their incompetence as a governing party. So either way, I think they're in really a tough spot.
Congressman, are you hearing anything from your Republican colleagues from New York, New Jersey, you know, those high tax states where they're worried about that state and local tax deduction? Are there enough of them to actually have an influence on this bill, or do you think they're just going to have to swallow whatever is put up there?
My read is that enough of them are going to swallow it and risk whatever repercussions so they can get it out of the House.
Man.
That they'll be, you know, like a Darrell Issa. There are a few, I think Faso in New York, but Tom Reed's going to support the bill, and several other New Yorkers. So they won't lose enough votes over that, I think, to doom the bill in the House. It looks like they're going to get it. They're going to get it done. They won't get all the Republican votes. They'll lose a dozen or so probably.
Are you surprised by the California delegation there? Seems unusually quiet. I mean, Issa being the one exception there, but.
Yeah, it seems to me that some of them think that the impact on their particular district is not substantial enough that they'll pay a political price. That's their judgment to make. I don't know. I look at my district. You know, Kentucky has a 6% state income tax. The city of Louisville has an additional 2.2% occupational tax. So, that's an 8% hit to people in my district, and that's not a blue state. I mean, they're according to the statistics, we have 500,000 people in Kentucky will lose an average of almost $10,000 of deductions.
Wow.
So, I think the impact of this is much broader than the press coverage is. Yeah. Obviously, New York, Illinois, California, and New Jersey are the biggest ones, but Maryland has a pretty hefty tax. Massachusetts does as well.
Darrell Issa ought to be worried. I know his district well. I mean, he ought to be worried about it. And in fact, anywhere in California should be worried about.
I would think so.
Any Republican in California.
I would think
right.
Yeah, exactly.
And the rumor is that they're not more of them speaking up because McCarthy is turning the screws on them from California. But I think especially after Tuesday, when the suburbs really revolted, I would be nervous if I were them.
Oh boy, I would too. I mean, I don't know. There's no way to tell, but I would guess if the congressional elections had been Tuesday, judging from what happened, we'd have picked up 40 seats. I think we would have. I think it would have been a romp, and maybe not as bad as the Republican romp in 2010 when they picked up 63, but I would bet we'd pick up 40 seats, and I don't see the energy dissipating. I think that Trump has so damaged the Republican brand that people, political affiliation has become part of people's identity, and I think more and more people are just not comfortable identifying as Republicans right now. I think that was a huge part of it. And the other thing is, I think that people who are not confirmed avid Trump fans, who are either independents or Democrats, have figured out that elections have consequences.
Right.
That they do make a difference, and that if right now Jill Stein and I forget the other,
Gary Johnson
would not have scratched on the board after this year. So that's a really good sign. And progressives have also figured out that unless they win, their principles don't mean anything.
And one of the things that I found so exciting about this Tuesday's results was that so many of it, it wasn't a top-down kind of election where the DNC or Nancy or Chuck said, we're running this whole thing and here are our candidates. This is like, it was MoveOn.org, it was Our Revolution, it was Emily's List that put up these candidates, city councils, mayors all across the country, and women and people of color and transgender people, LGBTQ people. I mean, it was amazing, the depth and the breadth of the win.
We're seeing that in Kentucky across the state.
Is that right?
Absolutely,
in Kentucky? Yeah.
Absolutely. I've been spending a lot of time away from my district in Kentucky because I'm the only progressive, and at least on a national basis, anywhere in the state. So I've been going to events and throughout the state, and every time I go, they say there are record crowds and there are a lot of new people in every one of these. And we lost the House last year, Kentucky House, for the first time in decades. We lost 17 seats by a total of 21,000 votes. And I believe we can take the House back. Looking at what happened in Virginia, and that was with the top of the ticket in Kentucky. In some places, Trump won by 40, 50 points. So, and we're recruiting candidates, and the Emerge Kentucky people, the women candidates, we're getting them everywhere, and we're getting them for city council seats and state legislative districts and school boards, and it's exciting.
I saw the raw vote in Virginia compared to 2013. The last time they elected a governor, Terry McAuliffe, was up 16% over 2013, and 31% in Charlottesville, where the university is. I mean, that's just grassroots organizing.
That's absolutely right, and that was despite horrible weather.
That's right. Yeah.
One figure I heard was that I forget the exact timing, but it was like 2 weeks out. 4 years ago, they had something like 25,000 absentee ballots. They had 25,000 absentee ballots the entire election. 2 weeks out, they had already had 40,000. So, again, great enthusiasm and energy.
So do you think this time, 2 years from now, you'll be sitting in the majority?
If I had to bet now, I would bet we would be.
Really?
Yeah. I think I've been saying for a year I thought it was 50-50, and now I think it's better than 50-50 chance that we have taken the House back. All the retirements, all this energy.
Yeah.
Trump's not going to change. I just think everything is looking like a wave election.
And the thing that's interesting is Donald Trump isn't going to change. I think that we can sort of say that with some sincerity now, right? Like there's a thing that presidents do when things start not going their way to try and save it and right the ship and maybe act like a little bit more of a president to everybody instead of just their party. And that's just not going to happen with Donald Trump. I know that like politics is unpredictable, and especially now more than ever. I can say that with some sincerity. I don't think Donald Trump is going to change.
No pivot coming.
No, I don't think the pivot is actually going to come.
No, look how fast he threw Ed Gillespie within minutes.
Yeah, right.
Under the bus, right?
From Asia.
Right.
And don't forget the Mueller investigation.
There is that. There is also that.
I suspect that there will be further developments in the next 12 months.
Oh, I think in the next 12 days. That's what Michael Flynn's afraid of.
Right.
On that, what do you think of? I saw Al Green yesterday, your colleague, saying that he's going to force another vote on impeachment before Christmas.
You don't have to say that. We can have Al Green himself tell us that. Here he is.
I now announce that before Christmas, there will be a vote on the chief inciter of racism, bigotry, hatred, xenophobia, sexism, ethnocentrism. There will be a vote in the U.S. House of Representatives, Mr. Speaker, on the impeachment of the president.
How do you vote?
Well, I think it's unfortunate that Al's doing this the way he's doing it, which is to use a personal privilege motion to get it on the floor. There are a lot of people, I think, for whom that vote is going to be, on our side particularly, it's going to be an uncomfortable situation. And I don't think he ought to put everybody in that position. I'm co-sponsoring an impeachment resolution that Steve Cohen's introducing or intends to introduce. And so, I'm not afraid of going on the record, but a lot of people, I think, just from a Democratic perspective, I think it's probably a bad idea to do it this way. It's not going anywhere. It puts a lot of people on a spot when they haven't gotten to that point yet where they think impeachment's justified.
They're no fan of Trump, but they're not yet ready to.
Right, and I think that's perfectly legitimate. I was not there either until he threatened to use the power of the government to take broadcast licenses away. To me, that was an impeachable offense, and so that's when I decided to get on, because Steve actually addresses that in his resolution.
When you think about it also, if what you say is correct, and certainly I would think the chances are certainly better after Tuesday that Democrats will have control of the House in 2018, starting in 2018, then Democrats could really do something about it in a procedural way and not a point of personal privilege.
Exactly. And I'll tell you what else will be exciting if we take the majority back is the seat on the Oversight and Government Reform Committee will be the most cherished seat.
Yeah.
It will be more in demand than Appropriations, Ways and Means, Energy and Commerce, you name it. That's where everybody's going to want to be.
That would be, that will be.
Does Elijah Cummings keep that, or is he going to have a fight for it?
Oh, I think I don't think anybody thinks that Elijah has done anything but a superb job in defending our perspective, and during his term as ranking member. So I don't think there'll be a challenge to him.
Congressman, there's another big important issue to you. I know there's another big winner on Tuesday, and that was the Affordable Care Act. 4 out of 10 voters in Virginia came out, said health care, the Affordable Care was their number one issue, and of course in Maine. The Mainers voted, what was it, 59%? Our 59. Fellow Mainer here. 59% to expand Medicaid in that state over the wishes of Paula Page.
Yeah, and so far the enrollment has more than exceeded past levels, in spite of the fact that they have done everything they can from this administration to sabotage it, cut the advertising budget by 90%.
Keep it a secret.
Keep it a secret. Cut the hours on Sunday of the website. They've again cut the subsidies, the cost sharing reductions subsidies. So, I think the ACA is being vindicated very well right now, and it clearly has not people forget there are problems. We've talked about this before. There are problems in the individual market. There's no question about that. There are always going to be problems in the individual market because it's a very difficult market for insurance companies to figure out. You come into a county in Kentucky where there may only be 30,000 people, which means there may only be 1,000 potential customers there for individual insurance. So how do you actually figure out, is it worth going into that county and negotiating with the providers and then marketing and doing all that? So there's always going to be a problem there. The vast majority of the Affordable Care Act is working really well. Expanded Medicaid, where it's been implemented in my state, as well as anywhere else, 500,000 people on expanded Medicaid. It's going well. The changes that were made in Medicare have vastly improved that program, not just the benefits for seniors, but also the financial viability. We've extended the life of Medicare by a number of years because of the cost-saving provisions in the law. Medicare is growing at the slowest rate it's grown in modern history. So people forget about that. I was on Ways and Means. We drafted the Medicare portion, and that was a big focus. How do we keep Medicare viable? How do we improve services for seniors? How do we eliminate waste? And we did some really good work there. But that never gets talked about. We talk about this, again, the problems with the individual market, which, again, is about 6% of the people.
And so the point there is this is the enrollment period. Again, you may not have known it because the Trump administration didn't want you to know it. But it started November 1. It goes only until December 15. They've cut that short, but now's the time that you can reapply or apply for a new policy under the provisions of the Affordable Care Act, which, again, despite don't believe what Donald Trump tells you, is not in a death spiral. It still exists.
Right, and for, they talk about all these premiums going up. Most of the increase in premiums in the individual market were because the administration shut off these cost-sharing reductions, and the insurance companies needed to do that to stay viable. But for the average person, 80% of the people who are buying individual insurance through the exchange, through the ACA, get a subsidy, and the subsidy rises with the cost of the premium. So the impact on most of the people is nothing. I mean, they're going to be in the same position they were.
One other winner, a person who won on the Tuesday, was a new member of the Virginia House of Delegates by the name of Chris Hurst, who was a local TV anchor in Virginia. His fiancée was was a reporter for that same station who was shot on the air while she was doing a stand-up. Chris Hurst decided he was going to, get even, and ran for the Virginia House of Delegates. NRA spent a ton of money to try against him, and he was taking on the NRA, and he won, Congressman, which proves the point you and I have talked about before. You can take on the NRA and win. Why don't more people do it?
It's a great question. I think the way I've always looked at it in my district, and I have an F rating from the NRA, proud of it. Proud of it.
Yes, sir.
And as a matter of fact, I didn't even fill out their last year their questionnaire because there were two questions I would have agreed with them on, and I said I don't want to get it.
You want to jeopardize your F rating?
No, I want a 0. But way I look at it is, in my district, there may be 2,000 people who would vote based on a gun position. That's it. That would be their top priority. They're not going to vote for me anyway. So, people say, "Oh, you're so courageous to take them on." I said, "No, there's no courage involved. They can't do anything to me." And I think that's the way people have to start looking at it. And I don't know whether Chris did or not, but I'm so proud of him, and it's a great story. But that politics, to me, electoral politics, is all about how many votes you move from one side to the other. And in most of these cases, if you're a Democrat, the NRA people who would cast their vote based on guns are not going to vote Democratic. They just aren't because they're wired to vote a different way. And that's why I think Democrats make a mistake in counting to them. But truth is, most Democrats aren't right now. It's the Republicans who are. And again, I think Republicans would get those votes, most of those votes, whether they're pro-gun or not.
Which means, sadly, that in the wake of Las Vegas and now in the wake of Sutherland Springs, Texas, we're not going to see any action at all. Congressman, thanks so much for coming
Thank
in
you.
today.
And thanks to the Teamsters for sponsoring. You know, UPS is our biggest employer, and we have tens of thousands of Teamsters in my district, so I want to shout out to them.
Alex Seitz-Wald, thanks for coming in today. All right, folks, have a great Thursday.
This is the Bill Press Show.